Hi, I'm Owen from Rask Australia. Thanks for tuning in to the Rask Network.
Before we get into today's show, there are a few things we have to go over.
Firstly, what you're about to hear and see is limited to general information only. It's not personal financial advice like you'd get from a financial planner. Also, it's important to remember that past performance is not indicative of future performance. That means that anything that's happened in the past, or we say today, is not necessarily going to reflect what happens in the future. Lastly, please consider that any of the guests or myself are featuring on this program may have a financial interest in some of the products or shares mentioned. That's enough from me. I hope you enjoyed today's program.
I'm your host, Kate Campbell, and my guest today is Claudine Chicheportiche, a high-performance mindset coach to everyone from world champion athletes to thought leaders and executives. We're going to be talking about how you can win the money game and how to develop a high-performance mindset to set yourself up for success in all areas of your life and to help us reach our financial goals. Welcome, Claudine, to the Australian Finance Podcast today.
Hi, Kate. Thanks so much for having me.
It is wonderful to have you here, and it's a beautiful day in Melbourne, so I'm very excited to record this, even though it's remotely.
No, that's perfect. I'm happy that you've got a gorgeous day. It brings the vibes and it helps to make everything better.
We're going to be talking today about a lot of things that listeners may not be actively thinking about, but are critical to their long-term success in all aspects of their lives. Specifically, I really want to dive in with you, Claudine, into strategies and practices in relation to creating a winning high-performance mindset and other types of mindsets that might be holding us back from reaching our goals, and even specifically today, our financial goals. And given how ambitious most of our listeners are, especially from everything I see in our Facebook community and the questions we get sent in, we know that you believe that building a financial future is super important. So this is a topic today that we don't talk about too often, but I really want to learn personally, and I hope you will as well. So Claudine, maybe if you can just give us a brief rundown on maybe what you do, what a high performance mindset and a winning mindset is.
Okay, great. Sure. Thanks, Kate. I'm really excited to be with your high performing and ambitious audience. I really resonate. I love high performers. I love high performers, perfectionists, overachievers, and just people who have that drive. So, they're the core audience that I work with, and you know what, respectfully, that's me, to varying degrees. And so what actually is, well, let's first of all answer, what do I do? So I work with leaders in government, in corporations, entrepreneurs, and I work with athletes at a national and international level who are really understanding that in order for them to be their best self and to perform at the level that they want to perform, whether it's driving high performing teams in a big organization or at a government level, or whether or not they want to become a contender and step on the podium at the world titles, or even qualify for the Olympics, those types of things, it's really critical to understand the role that your mindset plays in how you show up to life. And so I'm in that space because I've spent the last 20 years being pretty obsessed around my own mindset and how that drives how I think, how I feel, and then how I act. And this really all drives how I perform. So in terms of what is a high performance mindset, or what's a winning mindset? So I used to think that having a winning mindset, really it was just one thing. It was around standing on top of the podium, and it was winning another title, another tournament, yet again and again and again. And I used to think that that was what having a winning mindset was. But then in 2003, I competed in my first ever World Karate Championships, and the term world needs to be recognized a little loosely here, because it was really all of the countries that participated in the karate club that I was a part of. So we can effectively say it was an international tournament. And this was my first international tournament, competing as a rookie new black belt. And I had never competed at this level before, but of course, being the overachiever that I was, I said that I've got to win this. And up until this point, I really didn't have great karate. It took me a long time to get good at karate, but I just made a decision that I was going to win anyway because, I've got that pretty ambitious, bullish mindset that says if you believe you can do it. And this mindset took me a pretty long way. And even though my skills were lacking, I managed to get myself all the way into the finals. But in the finals, I couldn't outperform the competitor that I had in front of me. And respectfully, she was just better than me. She had been in the game longer. She was more experienced. She was the reigning world all-stars world champion. And she was just a better performer. And she won. And I had the belief system that second place was the first loser. And I came second at my first ever major international tournament. And I should have been really proud of myself, and I should have supported myself and gone, wow, that's an amazing achievement. But instead, I beat myself up a lot and felt like a total loser. And it didn't just happen for 5 minutes. Like I felt that way for pretty much, I felt sick to my stomach for like a year afterwards, like reflecting on that tournament. And I realized how unhealthy and how unhelpful and how actually inaccurate my definition of having a winning mindset was. So if having a winning mindset was only being the winner, did that mean that everything after that made me a loser? And actually it did, to me. And I realized as the years went on, I needed a much more sustainable model and definition of what having a true, I never would have looked at any of the other competitors the same way. I never looked at someone else in second place and thought, you loser. It was just this special treatment I reserved for myself, and I realized that, it was just radically incorrect, unhelpful, and it wasn't serving me. So to anyone who's listening, I'd like for you to consider, do you have any of these core beliefs like I had that whilst they can drive exceptional performance and make you feel like a winner, there can also be this double-edged sword. And maybe, is that really cultivating the person that you most want to be with the outcomes that you most want to be, feeling like a winner, feeling like a loser? So what do you think about that, Kate?
I think it's interesting because it often comes back to that how we talk to ourselves is really different to how we talk to our friends and family. And I remember listening to a podcast where they said actually writing out all the things you think about yourself and then showing it to would you say those things to your best friend or to your sister or your mum? And you often wouldn't because they're not very nice. And so, yeah, I think it's really interesting how we judge ourselves versus how we would judge others. And very different standards there.
Yes. And so, thinking about, what is a winning mindset? So today I think, a winning mindset is someone who I think that you're a winner, honestly, if you're just someone who puts it all out there. If you are someone who gives your A game all the time and you're always striving to be a better version of who you are, that for me is a winner. And the result and the outcome, I personally believe, will always be inevitable because you're winning at life. You are playing all in. You're not leaving your potential like somewhere locked away. You're not playing small, but you're also enjoying the journey because, as cliched as it sounds, life is not one moment in time. It is not you are not your bank account. You are not your shares. These are a reflection of you, but they are not you. And I believe that we all deserve to, feel fantastic as we move through life and enjoy each day, regardless of how things may fluctuate. And some days we get a great outcome and sometimes we don't. That's like life. It's like, do we want to only be happy when it's sunny? And do we want to say, oh, well, every day that it rains is a bad day? Or can we learn to appreciate all of it?
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good place for listeners to start with for today's episode. And I thought we should also mention that there'll be a workbook for listeners to go through because there's going to be so many things to digest and unpack after listening to today's episode that Claudine and our team have put together a workbook to help you reflect a little bit more deeply.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm such a nerd, Kate. I was so excited when we could, create this workbook, because it's one thing to talk about it, but the real shift comes from actually stopping and saying, oh, well, what are the, like, oh, that's interesting that she had those really destructive mindsets. Okay, well, maybe I can find mine. And so I'm really delighted that Rask, we've teamed up to create this workbook for your listeners, because it's really practical. And, mindset can be a bit fluffy. Let's be honest, it can be a little wishy-washy. And I'm not into that. I want actual outcomes and results for people. And I want to take what's invisible and non-tangible, and I want to make it really tangible so that we can see, oh, this is how my mindset impacts how I show up. And then if we want different results in how we show up and the results we get, then we can do that by, understanding what that trajectory is.
And we'll mention it again throughout the episode, but all the links will be in the show notes as well. So if that does catch your attention, definitely have a look after it. And Claudine, we often get caught up in the game of more, better, faster, and the goalposts always keep moving. And this applies to many areas of our lives, not just our finances. But can we ever win the money game, or is pursuing this endless goal going to lead us to unhappiness?
Yeah. And yeah, I think first and foremost, absolutely, yes, we can win any game that we want. But if all we ever do is change the rules of the game, so moving the goalposts is effectively changing the rules of the game. And if that's what we're doing, then respectfully, no, we're not going to win any game at all. We're going to constantly feel not enough by saying, I'll be happy when, and so for me, it was, I'll be happy when I win this title. I'll feel proud of myself when, but now I want a better, spinning hook kick. Now I want this. Now I want that, right? And it was this, I don't just want to win one. I want to win two. I want to win three. I want to win 10. Oh my word. And this voracious appetite for more and next and next. Now, what I'm not saying is to dial down the ambition, right? That's not the answer. But can we manage how we play the game, understanding that we have this, unbelievable level of ambition and drive inside of us? So I'm not interested in anyone dialing down their ambition. But my question is, can you set the rules up so that you play to win all the time? And you might say, oh, that is just so, like, every kid gets a certificate. And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, how can you set it up for yourself so that you feel like you are winning? And in my experience, when we are progressing, when we are living our fullest potential, those two things alone typically make us feel like we are winning. When we're moving forward, when we're making progress. One of my clients, Joe Ward, he's an ultra runner, and he's an Australian champion. He's a phenomenal athlete. And one of his principles is, if you're moving, you're winning. And he wins huge, huge races from this principle. He'll do a tempo where he'll do 13 minutes jog, and then it might be, say, a 24 to 36 hour race. So no sleeping, no stop, right?
Wow.
And from the beginning, yeah, it's mind boggling, right? But from the beginning, he'll have a pace and then he'll walk, and everyone's overtaking him, right, from the start. But he knows that if you're moving, you're winning. And he can sustain a pace that after about 12 hours, that's when they start dropping. And this is when he says, oh, I'm just getting into my comfort zone, and he keeps that same tempo, would you believe, the entire race, and obviously the strategy varies. But the point is, like, run your race the way that you want to play. And so if you're looking over here at Susan and Bob and John and saying, well, they've got this money and I need to do this and that, you're not playing your game. You're playing their game. And you don't know what the terms and conditions are for fulfillment. So that's not a way to win the money game. If we want to win the money game, we need to, one, to determine what does success look like? What does winning look like? And then two, am I sure that this is serving me, or am I just doing this because I think it's going to impress other people?
Yeah. And I
You
think
know,
that comes back to figuring
yeah.
out your own goals and what you want to achieve. Because, I mean, one of the favorite terms to Google is XYZ celebrity net worth. And I think it's really interesting that we keep searching this, that it doesn't really have any effect on our own lives, but we like to find out this information.
Yes. And maybe it's aspirational.
Hmm.
Like maybe we just say, wow, like so and so's worth, $20 million. That's amazing. And I really like aspirational things because they show you what's possible and it stretches your mind. That's what I like about it.
Yeah.
People doing exceptional things. It shows me, oh my God, one of the things that I always love to do, and I've been doing this for years, is what's the mindset of a person like that?
Hmm.
How do they think? That this is why I've always been digging into mindset. So if someone earns X, if someone has a gross, net worth, their net worth is X or Y. How do they think and feel about money? What are their principles? What are their first principles? What is the game that they are playing? Because I guarantee that it's going to be different from my game or your game.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's something really good to reflect on is what game you're playing, and that it's not going to be the same as all your friends and family. And therefore, just
Mm,
comparing your numbers to their numbers doesn't
mm.
really help you that much unless it's that aspirational thing.
Yeah, and I think that what's very important as well is what's the underlying value system. So, for example, what do you value more? And for your listeners to consider, what do you value more? Do you value zeros or do you value being an entrepreneur? Like, do you want to go and get employment and have employment in a huge consulting firm? Or do you have an entrepreneurial spirit that says, I'm going to take every bit of what I'm doing and reinvest it back into my business because I just really need to be my own boss, or whatever it is. And so understanding, what's your value system? A lot of people's happiness and sense of self-worth and, their contribution and service can respectfully be bought for $150,000 a year. They might sign up to a job and it might be compromising who they really are. It might be compromising their passion for being creative, or for being, they might be doing work that they don't find particularly interesting and is really below their skill set, but they want that $150,000 paycheck, or whatever paycheck they're getting. And someone else might say, you know what, I just want to go to work every day and feel fantastic and do something that I love. And that's their driving force. So it's about understanding that your value system isn't the same as your sister's or your mother's or your dad's or anyone's. But it's about having that inner strength to acknowledge this is who I am, and I'm going to unapologetically be myself and live my truest values.
Absolutely. And I think in doing that, many of us would self describe ourselves when it's come to our careers or the way we want to manage our finances as high performers, or we want to fall
Mm.
into that category eventually. Are you able to talk a little bit more? I know we mentioned mindset, but what does a high performance mindset look like? Maybe some of us are already in that mindset or we're aspiring to be.
Okay. So I think that, I believe that a high performance mindset ultimately is a mindset that serves you, that brings out the best in you, and it's a mindset that you love. So I don't think that a mindset that sabotages yourself and tells you that you're not good enough and sort of is whipping you into performance, is that really a high performance mindset? Is that you? So you might say, oh, well, that yields fantastic results. But is that a high quality life? Is that a high performing level of day to day life? For me, the answer is no. Everyone is free to choose their own definition of what a high performance mindset actually looks like. But for me, it's a mindset that encourages you. It takes you to another level, and it's a mindset that supports you. And really, it's a mindset that harness to become an ever better version of yourself. Now, how do we go about doing that? So I actually think that there are 6 keys to creating a high performance mindset. And listeners these are all mapped out on my webpage, where listeners can go to. These aren't in the workbook, but they're easily found. So without unpacking every one of them in detail, what fuels a high performance mindset? So there's no cookie cutter rule here. What's a high performance mindset for me isn't necessarily a high performance mindset for someone else, because we have we're totally different people. We've got different belief systems. We've got different ambition levels. We've got different philosophies. We've got different values. So there's no one size fits all around what a high performance mindset is and must and should be. However, I believe that these 6 key components help us to fuel and to define what is a high performance mindset for me and for you. So the first key is mindset by design. And what this really means is not showing up on autopilot, not just sort of believing in things and adopting the belief systems of it, maybe your family or the environment or what others think you need to be, but it's really about defining, what am I going to choose to believe about and think about myself, and really being clear around designing the type of mindset that you want to have and just not showing up on autopilot. So the second one is self-awareness. So if I'm not aware of how I think about things, then I'm really unable to course correct. I'm unable, like imagine if I've got an athlete who is just really unaware of how they're competing or how they're training. We don't have a high performing athlete here. So we really need high levels of awareness, of self-awareness, and it needs to be accurate. It's got to be accurate self-awareness to drive a high performance mindset. I also think that emotional intelligence feeds into it as well, because I used to think that we only needed mindset. And then after the World Cup in 2003, I realized, oh my God, I did not have a handle on my emotions at all. Like they were taking me to play, they were running my life. It wasn't the other way around. And so I realized as well, like as I got older, I realized that life is also relationships, and performance is founded on the quality of our relationships, the relationship we have with ourselves and the relationship we have with others. And we need advanced levels of emotional intelligence in order to be able to get advanced levels of performance. And then the fourth key is core beliefs. So what do I believe to be true? What do I believe about money? What do I believe about myself? What do I believe my limitations are? What do I believe, is possible? And those core beliefs define our mindset. And then growth mindset is the fifth key. And this is how much am I able to grow and stretch in my thinking so that I can become my ideal self and be an ever, sort of evolving person and human and performer. And then the sixth and final key is what I believe is a still mind. So it's not a mindset that's always racing and constantly searching and yearning. But if we look at, getting into a flow state, or when life is just sort of, fluid and easy and creating, and, the wealth just sort of, it's this really free flowing sort of level of performance. That's a really advanced and extremely elite high level of performance, where it's just this flywheel, and it's almost like this sort of effortlessness that doesn't come from a busy, chaotic, crazy, intense, judgmental mind. It comes from a mind that's free, and it comes from a mind that's more still and calm. So that's why I believe that a still mind really fuels a high performance mindset as well.
Yeah, these are definitely, some of them sound quite challenging to achieve, really. I don't think I quite have a still mind yet. But the first one you mentioned of running on autopilot, I think that affects a lot of us. And just because we take a lot of those beliefs from growing up and how our family and friends spoke about money. And sometimes we don't even realize that it's affecting us today.
1000%. And that's why this is why it's my first key, because it really sort of wakes us up from this, hypnosis. It's like we're hypnotized by this social conditioning. Men should be earning that, women should be earning that, we need to be doing these things to earn money. We have all of these rules and core beliefs around, where money comes from and how much we can make and how much of a grind it is or isn't. And, so how much of that did we just inherit? And is it really true? And some of us can be great at breaking these cycles and understanding that we all have core like beliefs and thoughts that are actually not even true, but we just sort of can't really stop them because they've
Mm.
become part of our conditioning. So I think that, it's a lot, isn't it? I agree. Like those 6 elements, those things that feel like this is now, if we're talking like absolute, I'm talking, this is the path I believe to, absolute phenomenal performance, top 1%er, top best of the best, towards enlightenment. Not everyone is that hardcore, Claudine. Like, some of us just want to be doing really well with our portfolio. So, okay, perfect. So we want to say, okay, well, what are my beliefs around money? What are my beliefs around earning and making money? And are they helpful? Are they true? Where did they come from? So that's a really important thing. Where did they come from? So where did our mindsets come from? They typically come from three places broadly. The first one is the country and the culture that we all grew up in. So the country, if we grew up in an affluent society, we all by default will naturally gravitate towards the level of affluence in our society. If I grew up in Monaco where there was a lot more money, I bet I'd be a lot more financially wealthy. If I grew up in the middle of the jungle, I bet I'd have a lot less money. Our environment determines us in many, many ways until we can consciously break free from that.
Mm.
So the first one that forms our mindset is the country and the culture that we grew up in. And the second one is either your direct family or the people that you grew up with. What did you hear people saying about money, about, how hard it was to make, or how easy it was to make? Were you given lots of lavish gifts? You probably naturally are very good at accumulating wealth because you just grew up thinking that this is natural. Someone else who grew up in a lot more struggle will find that a lot harder to achieve simply because their kind of inner thermostat is set to, I'm here to struggle. And and we're not here to struggle. Well, we can shift that core belief if we want, if people would like to. And then the final one, and this is the most important one, it's our self-talk. It's how we think to ourselves. So do we want to keep repeating the stories that we heard growing up or that we've heard about money? You know what? If they're helpful and productive and they make you feel amazing and they add value to you and to others, perfect, keep them. And if they don't, let's put them under the spotlight and say, hey, do we really want to continue this for the rest of my life? Or do we want to create a better self-talk, a more helpful, supportive self-talk that's going to serve me and others?
Yeah, there's a lot of those things, and I often see from listeners and myself and my friends that we say, like that thing going around in your head, like, I'm not good with money. I don't have time to
Right.
deal with money. I can never learn about money. It's all just too hard. It's not for me. It's for other people. Yeah, so I think that's quite interesting because there's a lot of things that hold us back that maybe we weren't told growing up, but somehow along the way we got those tracks playing in our head on repeat.
Right. And I mean, Kate, you've just done such a brilliant job of identifying a lot of, potential core beliefs that, some of our listeners might have around money. As long as we continue to say, I'm just not good with money, well, guess what? You are going to live in line with that identity that you have of yourself, and your identity is shaped off the back of your core beliefs. And we can say, well, I haven't been great with money up until this point, but this is where having a flexible mindset comes in. This is where the growth mindset comes in. But first, we need to say self-awareness. How do I think about money? Oh my gosh, I just realized like I'm saying some of those things that Kate just said out loud to myself. Oh my gosh, like how is that impacting my earning capacity? How is that impacting my ability to negotiate or to whatever it is? And then I'm giving everyone 100% full permission to change that inner script. But first, we've got to become aware of that narrative. And it's not a false affirmation. I don't want people to start chanting these affirmations. We just want to identify that we've got a narrative going on in our heads that has been a dialogue for some time. And now we're allowed, because we're conscious human beings, we're not fixed in stone, we're not stuck, we're not broken. But we can start to, I just like dialing it down. Just when that voice comes up and it says, oh, well, hang on just a minute. Like, just because I wasn't great with money in the past, let me just dial that down, because I'm listening to these podcast episodes now and I'm doing these Rask courses. And you know what? I'm actually improving. Isn't that more accurate? Actually, it is accurate, right? Because that is what your audience is doing.
Yeah.
And they're becoming, and so that's a more accurate narrative. Quite often our self-belief and our self-talk, it's actually false if we really examine it, or it's only partially correct.
So if we're listening right now and going, okay, I haven't actually thought too much about unpacking my mindset or some of these scripts that have been going, and I've just been sort of dealing with my money on autopilot so far. I'm just going, okay, maybe I should listen to some podcasts or read a book or learn some of the basics, and then I'll figure out the next steps from there. If you want to start thinking about how your culture and your family and even your self-talk is impacting your current financial mindset, and maybe how it's impacting your progress towards your financial goals, where do you even start?
Okay. Well, Kate, you start with your amazing podcast, I would say. You've got all this wealth of information there. And I think that we can sort of start, creating new identities in two different ways. We can do it from the outside in, and we can also do it from the inside out. So I can shift my mindset and I can shift how I think about myself through my actions. So let's say I'm working with an athlete and they don't believe that they're a contender. They don't believe that they're going to get on top of the podium. My job is to work out how I can get them to take on that new identity and have core beliefs and thoughts and emotions that says, I am worthy of being a winner. I'm going to stand on that podium because I can. So how do we do that? Well, number one, we can actually get them to do activities that are in line with being a champion or someone who is worthy of being in that position. So asking questions like, if I was a champion, what sort of thoughts would I have? How would I talk to myself? How would I think to myself? How would I act? What are the sorts of ways that I would look after myself? How would I train? And we have a whole lot of practical exercises that we can actually start doing and embodying. So we can do it from our actions. Let's take your listeners, for example. They can go and do any of your free courses. And the more courses that they do, the more they're going to start saying, actually, I feel really quite proud of myself. I've just done this course, or I've done this, or, and they're starting to take actions that are realigning their identity with a more healthy and sustainable view around how they manage money. So that's one way. The other way is that we can actually go within and we can examine our beliefs, our thoughts, and our feelings and how we act towards money. And so that's why in the workbook, we've got that iceberg model there. That iceberg model, can I just say, I cannot emphasize enough how powerful that model is if your listeners do this exercise and apply it. I have changed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lives with this one activity, and I do it within 90 minutes. If I'm working one-on-one with a client, and we've put it in the workbook because we really want it to be super valuable to everyone. So if you don't have the workbook in front of you right now, then just imagine an iceberg. Now, we all know an iceberg model or a version of it. So we've got 90% of it or 80% of it, whatever the percentage, underwater. And then we've just got the tip of the iceberg, which is above the surface. Okay. So the stuff that's above the surface, the stuff that's visible, these are our behaviors and our actions. This is all the stuff that I can see and everyone else can tangibly see. But then underneath that, we have got things like our emotions and how we feel about life and ourselves. We've got our thoughts, how we think about things, and then we've got our core beliefs. So what happens is a lot of the time people try and attack change or create change at the level of the actions and behaviors. They say, I just need to have more discipline. I just need to not spend money on lattes. I just need to do this and that with my money. I need to make, and we're trying to attack it at this surface level of our actions and behaviors. So what I do is I go right down deep and I say, what do I truly believe about money? Oh, I truly believe that, I'm just terrible with money. Let's say I have that as a core belief. Then if we follow the iceberg model up and I say, what are my core beliefs? And then what are the thoughts that I have off the back of that? So my core beliefs are, and you just said a whole bunch of them, Kate, before, my core belief is it's just too hard. I don't know where to start. Whatever their core, but like no matter, my core belief could be no matter how much I make, it's never going to be enough.
Hey listeners, it's Kate here. What an episode. This conversation with Claudine was so massive and we covered so many topics that we decided to split it into 2 parts, which is why the episode may have felt like it ended quite suddenly. So stay tuned for part 2 coming very soon, where we're going to keep unpacking that iceberg model that Claudine just mentioned and how to use it in your own life. And we've got an awesome workbook, which is in the show notes that you can definitely check out there. How do you not give up on your money journey, even when you make mistakes? Because that's really hard and often holds us back from moving forwards. We're going to talk about how to set the right financial goals for you and stop the goalposts from continuously moving so you can really win your own money game and not anybody else's. And really going to talk about the cost of comparing yourselves with other people and the impact that can have on your own financial journey and on your own health and well-being. So I really hope you enjoyed part 1 with Claudine. I hope you check out the show notes because there is going to be an awesome workbook in there that you could download for free, like many of our things, to check out as well. So thanks for listening and stay tuned for part 2.